Welcome, everybody, to the Amazing Outdoors podcast. I'm excited. I got a great show for you today. This is episode 38. I sit down with Beth Anderson. She is the owner of Wild River Outfitters. She took the business over this year and, like myself, was a new business owner, and she shuttled all my drift boats for me this year. She is an amazing outfitter for canoe and kayak rentals on the St Croix River. I really recommend you check her out. The information to see her organization, put together a paddle, and get out experience some of the St Croix River, an hour and a half north of the Twin Cities Metro. You just can't beat it. I do want to mention before today's podcast starts, this show is being brought to you in partnership with Upland Outfitters. The Relentless Pants have been rocking my whole entire season. Besides 1 or 2 days, I've had these things on to the hardware store, working at the home, everywhere. They are holding up way past what I expected. Check them out if you're in the market for a new pair of hunting pants. You won't go wrong. Use discount code AMAZING and you'll get yourself 20% off. I should mention Sport Dog. I had Clay Thompson on in episode 37. Check out their new systems. If you're looking at like a GPS or a location collar, I really am very pleased with what I'm seeing out of the Tech 2.0 that I've been using this season. So check out Sport Dog. Without any other banter here, headed off to Kansas shortly to close out my season. I hope everybody had a great season this year. I've got some really cool things in the works, and we're going to come back from hunting and dive into the podcast here and really kind of put some stuff on the table. So stay tuned. There's probably a Patreon thing coming with some giveaways. I'm going to make it pretty simple for people, and probably going to start releasing some episodes up there a little earlier than out on the host service. So enjoy today's show, episode 38. Beth Anderson and I sit down. Not exactly sure how sound quality is going to turn out here, but I think we've got enough stuff in the shop here at Wild River Outfitters to kill some of the echoing. So I think we're going to be all good. I'm here with Beth Anderson, the owner of Wild River Outfitters in Grantsburg, Wisconsin. Beth's a valued partner to Amazing Outdoors. She is the one who drops me in the river and picks me up at the end of the day, and runs all the shuttles for my guide business. And I wanted to get you on the podcast, Beth, because A, you're new to Wild River Outfitters. You purchased the business last year. And I think there's a lot of really good things to come in 2022. 2021 was a kind of a rough year for me personally with all kinds of shit. And I think you could feel the pain a little bit being a new business owner and starting a new endeavor. So how was your year?
My year was great.
Yeah.
I definitely felt the pain of a new business, though. I hear you there.
All the new avenues and new things, the nuances,
a lot of learning.
Yes, it's always a learning curve with business. I've learned that from the get-go. If you're not learning, then you're
probably doing it wrong.
Well, you're not only not progressing, you're regressing.
That's true. Well, thanks for having me here today. I'm excited about this.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I really honestly appreciate everything you did for me last season, and I'm looking forward to really blowing the water out of 2021 or 2022 here with the guide business, and kind of surprisingly itching for spring a little bit more than I normally am. My bird hunting season hasn't ended yet officially, and that's usually the kickoff for me, is like, oh crap, now hunting season's done. It's time to get on with life.
Here come the fish.
Yes. Excuse me. You usually get a little bit of reprieve to kind of coordinate and spend some time acquiring the right tackle that people have lost throughout the year.
There is that. We joked about getting a magnet to drag the river to find some of that beautiful tackle that's left behind.
I'm fairly certain I've got a few things down there, but I try not to leave anything. Yeah, the National Park Service doesn't like that either.
No, they don't.
So how did you get into it? You know, I honestly, Jerry and Marilyn used to own this business up here, and
31 years.
Yeah, they had it for sale for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
I hemmed and hawed about it myself for a year. And then I decided to buy a farm instead of a business.
Hey, buy yourself a different kind of job.
Well, yeah, it was the transition to a different kind of lifestyle that led me to that purchase. But what were you doing prior to this?
You know, I was fortunate enough to spend 25 years in the hospitality industry in hotels, restaurants, both locally in the metro area here, as well as nationally and internationally. So I had tons of travel and a lot of customer service. I worked in sales. I did a lot of operations work in the hospitality industry. And, you know, COVID, the word of 2020, 2021 really changed that industry. You know, they were talking about it on the news just this week on the hospitality industry and how it's absolutely changed.
Oh, yeah.
Myself, my former business was in convention and meeting planning. So
Sure.
I've done that for about 5 years and
Totally died.
loved it. And
But yeah, totally died with COVID. I mean,
100% of the meetings in the world canceled. And, you know, I mean, that's something that's just, those of us in the service industry generally think, you know, hey, I could fall back on a serving job or a bartending job or, you know, anything in the service, but 100% of it stopped. Excuse me. So I had a choice at that point. You know, I'm in my mid 40s and I have a daughter and I have to work. So it was, well, my business went to $0 in 2020 and I had to make a decision. And I spent my summer up here in the Grantsburg area. I'm from Taylor's Falls originally, born and raised. And I was at my brother-in-law's land up here in Grantsburg, spending the summer on the river, loving life, hiding away from all the things going on in the metro area in the 2021. And one morning off the cuff, my brother-in-law said, you know, hey, you should buy that business that's for sale at the end of town. And you'd always have a campground or a place to camp. I said, well, what business? You know, and he said that canoe place. Oh, the canoe place has a campground? And he said, it sure does. So anyhow, that was on a Sunday, August 23rd, I think it was. And I drove by here and walked in and met Jerry and Marilyn. Didn't mention anything about the sale, just checked out the place and made the choice that literally that night, like this is, I think, where my daughter and I are meant to be. You know, the St Croix River and the River Valley have called to me, if you will, my whole life. You know, I was literally born in St. Croix Falls.
You're giving me goosebumps because I hear the same call all summer long and I've had the same attraction.
Oh,
and it's beyond just the river here. This whole area is really neat.
The incredible things that I've found living here. I mean, like I said, I've been within a mile of this river for 35 of my 44 years on this planet and loved the resource and enjoyed it, but never truly understood what it gives to our community and what's here for us. And spending that summer up here in 2020 was life-changing. And, you know, I took that opportunity to grab this business, and Marilyn and Jerry had that opportunity to retire. Mm-hmm. You know, they weren't looking to leave the business for any other reason than being done.
Well, and yet being a customer of theirs for a few years prior, you know, I could tell that they were ready to retire. They wanted to retire, and you could see it in them. I don't want to say they ran their business in a bad way, but you could tell that the business reflected their desire to retire. Sure. They had kind of reached their maximum point with the business. And
I was so fortunate to have the opportunity in 2020 when I made the offer. I immediately started to be able to work with them, you know, and then see what their vision was when they purchased a place 30 years ago and what they had done to grow that from.
Is that how long they had it for? 30 years?
31 years is how many seasons they operated the outfitter. Wow. Mm-hmm. And when they started, it was just a few canoes. And I think there was an archery business at one point. This location, this will be the 50th year of this location being in operation. So it was a gas station and an archery store for its conception. And then through the years has always had something to do with the river and outfitting. And, you know,
yeah, it's an interesting area because you do, at least over the last few years of driving through 70 on Highway 70 here, this was kind of my gateway to northern Wisconsin.
Certainly.
Growing up in eastern Wisconsin, just really had not put this corridor of Wisconsin on my map until I moved out to the Twin Cities.
Sure.
And then when I realized, well, I wasn't really a fan of the hunting seasons in Minnesota, and you know, they just fire those damn rifles off too early. Just wrapping up with fishing, now I get a chance to bow hunt, and they're already shooting rifles, you know, and
right.
So I couldn't give up my Wisconsin hunting. And then I got a couple, going on 7 years now, dog's 6. So, I got a couple short hairs and started grouse hunting, and this really became the gateway, along with me fishing a lot up here. And, I'm still amazed. Driving through town today, there's economic development going on up here.
Definitely.
But for some reason, this stretch of highway between the river and Grantsburg somewhat seems to be plagued with businesses that, if they're like, the Suzuki store down the road, that's been empty now for a couple of years. And there's just a couple of them here that, there used to be more
action.
There used to be more business along here. So I guess my point is, you've got a really nice location.
Absolutely.
Infused it with some cash, and you're the first business as Minnesotans cross over the river into Wisconsin.
Yes.
So you got like an ideal prime location from what you're doing and where your proximity is, both from town, the Twin Cities, and the river. It's it's amazing proximity. You can do everything you want out of here.
It's true. And having the Highway 70 thoroughfare running by us. My business, as you said, is right here. First building on the right when you come over the river. And
you're not just canoes either. You've got a nice shop here with local art and crafts and other things here. And, you're definitely supporting the local economy and local artists and other craft makers and things like that here in the shop. So, it's not just for people who want to rent a canoe.
And I'm glad to hear you say that, because that's what I thought it was, Brian, to be honest with you.
I still think most people driving by the road, that's probably the impression they get.
I think so. And, our vision for 2022 is to illuminate what we offer here.
Mm-hmm.
To your point, it's really important to me that the crafts and the arts and the handmade knives that we have on property
they look pretty nice right there.
They're nice. Those are made from a local bear trapper.
Are they? I was going to ask you afterwards who's making those.
Yes, that's it. And he will make knives to your specifications. Stop in and see us about it. But yeah, we have everything from a $5 beach towel to a $30 handmade, beautiful cotton, beach towel that's lighter for the canoe trip.
Sure.
But we want to make sure that we've got something for everybody. So if there's a need, we'll cover your need. If there's a want, we probably have that too.
Yeah. And just looking around and knowing what I've had to occasionally get from you guys, because I've either left it at home or broke or whatever. You guys got river bags. You got everything somebody really needs if they didn't have all of the equipment, had some maybe to go camping on the river. You've got enough here that you could really add to a nice experience for them. So if they wanted to pick up a couple dry bags, maybe a net, you've got some fishing tackle and things like that here too. Not going to say you're a fishing tackle shop, but
certainly not. But we do try to have something for each one of the fishermen, even into the fly fishing. There's a little bit of everything.
We're going to work on that fly fishing stuff this year.
I'm excited to work more on the fly fishing. That's something that I think is really an untapped resource up here. What beautiful river we have for standing in.
Well, and even, for me, that was the big attraction for starting my guide business.
Yep.
I've said this on the podcast a few times. I outdoorsman, so Ted Nugent's always kind of out there, and growing up with a rock and roll kind of family, Motor City Madman was on the radio, and
it's pretty great. He's a good guy. I've met him twice.
Have you?
Yeah, I have. He's in the hotel business. He came through to do the archery shows in the metro.
What I always found fascinating with Ted was growing up in that environment of drugs and rock and roll, how sober he really is. 100% sober.
Truly.
And I always found that to be both, lack of a better term, but, inspiring. Because I think a lot of people get challenged with just crutches in life, and to see somebody that has all the money in the world and just to see his passion towards the outdoors.
I think that's what keeps him grounded, right? It keeps me grounded.
Keeps me grounded. And it's something we're going to try to do this year on the podcast, is kind of draw that symbiotic relationship with the outdoors and people and even their faith at a certain degree, and how it all kind of ties together. But Ted's always talking about the mystical flight of the arrow.
There you go.
And that always got me when I was a young kid, listening. My old man always put on Fred Bear when we were going out hunting and stuff like that. And it's just, So when I started fly fishing, the only thing that came to my mind was that mystical flight of the arrow. And I think there's something to it with fly fishing because it's a much more challenging approach to fishing. It's a smaller niche group of guys. It's like guys that just want to, go out and beat themselves up to achieve something that you could do with a conventional rod probably 5 times over.
Certainly.
It's just a different kind of group of guys. It's people who enjoy the challenge. It's people maybe who have felt like they've reached the end of the rope with conventional tackle and they want to try something new. And that's kind of how I got into it. And I think for the most part, it's kind of gone through its ebbs and flows through the fishing industry. And up here, even my drift boat was ex-guides, fly fishing guides, drift boat. But I still think it's underserviced, underutilized. And I think there's a lot more people who are showing interest in fly fishing who have never picked up a fly rod before. And I think that is the big expansion. And that's the big serviceable market is getting newer people into the sport. There's a lot of it's kind of like I chose 2 specific outdoor niches, both fly fishing and then upland bird hunting. And they're both, if you had to pick more of the old white guy, sports in the like rich white guy sports in the outdoor industry, that's what they are. And I didn't get there because I was a rich white kid. I came from an affluent family. We didn't have fly rods. My dad didn't even really understand what it was. We hunted deer, we didn't have any dogs. And occasionally we throw some goose silhouette decoys out in the field after they cut the corn and kill a few ducks and geese. And that was about it. Absolutely. So I kind of got into it because I was looking for something different. I've done a bunch of things before and I wanted a new challenge. And much like fly fishing and upland hunting, that challenge and pursuit of going to wild places and seeking out new areas and the adventure of it all really lend itself better to me than say sitting in a deer stand.
Absolutely.
So I do think you're going to see more fly fishermen over the next decade start to really realize what resource they have here. I think people know, but I think it's such a big river that people are off put by it to a certain degree if they don't have a boat or they don't have a guide. And, they're just looking at, hey, this great river up here, but I don't know where to start.
Right.
And I can't tell you how many people I've talked to about it. I said, well, just call Beth.
Well, we service 227 miles of river and we try to really.
Is that how long it is fully added up all the way down to, is that past St. Croix Falls?
That's to St. Croix Falls.
Okay. So that's the Namacoggin and the St. Croix.
Yep.
It's 227.
And it's actually just south of Taylor's Falls. It's down through to William O'Brien and past.
Okay.
There. So it's where the national park system kind of ends. But we do service from Hayward. We have a couple trips last summer from Hayward down to Pepin and actually getting part of that Mississippi. Yeah.
Wow.
It's quite a lot. It was a 14-day trip.
Once you get past the Dallas, in St. Croix Falls there, the dam.
It's a different river.
It's a totally different river. Mm-hmm. And once you get past Stillwater.
Then it's a different river.
Well, excuse me. It's big water.
Big water and big barge.
Well, and that's where I was going next. There's a lot bigger vessels down there.
Certainly. The majority, I would say 95% of my paddlers are between Hayward and St. Croix Falls. But the majority of those paddlers truly are within a 40-mile stretch of my location here off of Highway 70.
Yeah.
Because it's the best water. You and I both know this is the best. It's the best stretch,
It is. There's gorgeous stretches of the Namacoggin.
Absolutely.
And I will tell you right now, I'm actually going to try to float next year or this year. Mm-hmm. I'm not exactly sure where I'm going to start. I would love to float Trago to here and just do a voyage.
Yep.
However, I'm in a drift boat, so I average 1 mile an hour is kind of the average. Okay. And this year it was a half a mile an hour.
The water was a bit dry. We were fortunate enough up here this year, at least, to have some water. I know south of Taylor's Falls, it was a bit more of a struggle.
Oh yeah.
We had water on the St. Croix. The Namacoggin also was a little low, but
I definitely bought a different vessel specifically to service customers because of that.
The levels, yes.
Yeah.
I lost quite a bit of boats last year as far as some damage to the bottoms of those boats. But
I imagine so. Well, let's just say prior to my Clacka craft drift boat and my raft, I had Old Woody, and I still have Old Woody. And I had put in probably 45 hours worth of work, refiberglassing.
Sure.
I've got over 500 hours into that boat in the last 8 years, 6 years, whatever it is. When you got a wooden boat,
it's an annual. Yep.
Labor of love. I've said this many times. It is a very nice boat. I'm not going to lie. I could make it even nicer, but at some point you got to fish.
That's the point,
you could sit and work on a wooden boat all day long, I think.
That's true.
And it's always you don't always know what you're getting yourself into. Like, it's okay. It's boat repair. And it could go down a rabbit hole. But every time you take that layer of paint off and you stick that putty knife in there, you're worried.
It could go bad.
And this past year was the worst I had seen it. And partly due to not understanding boat repair and probably doing it a mediocre job for the first major rehaul of the bottom of the boat. I was going to do it this year to make sure that I wasn't going to have to ever do it again.
Sure.
So I really went deep and got out all the dry rot, went underneath all the ribbing of the boats, refiberglassed everything. And then I get on the river the first day and have a good day. Actually, I think you shuttled us. It was a friend of mine who wanted to go out muskie fishing the last couple of years and couldn't make it happen. And then with my opening of schedule last year, I was a lot more available during the week than I had been in previous years, and it was one thing pre-COVID, like I could go see a customer up here. I had some in the area and then kind of duck out for the rest of the day. I didn't have to be held accountable to internet connection. Right. Even, work till 3:00 and in the summertime, dump your boat in, you have plenty of time to do a short float. But yeah, no, when I became relatively available, I got a lot of phone calls.
I bet.
And I took on a lot of free business last year. The National Park Service was wondering, well, how did you operate a business like this? You lost a bunch of money. Yes, I did. It's guiding for fishing is not a very profitable business.
Do what you love, not what necessarily pays well, right?
Well, and that was the dream I wanted to chase and I luckily had put a few things financially together. We got rid of all of our debt, which was the biggest leap forward.
Certainly.
Still working on the house yet, which is the last, but I didn't qualify that as debt.
You got to live somewhere, Brian.
Well, you got to live somewhere and you got to make investments with your money. And when it deals with real estate, it's in the investment column and not debt.
Yes.
Because there's equity in there.
There is.
Now, you don't have any equity on that credit card, I got rid of those a long time ago, but there was a truck loan and a few other things out there that, yeah. But last year, I get done with that first trip, pro bono, didn't make any money. It was all expenditures out. And I got home, parked the boat, and went to go hook it up the next day. And I was damn lucky I made it home. And I'll tell you, you try to find somebody to weld a new spindle on your boat trailer last summer.
Oh,
I bought a new boat because it was easier. It was a guaranteed for sure way I was going to be able to take my customers out. I called around for 3 freaking days. I had no answer. The best answer was, well, we can get to it in a couple of weeks. Well, it's the middle of June. I got customers backed up here. I'm no luck. And the man upstairs works in mysterious ways, because I'll tell you, the boat that I've always wanted to buy was here in Grantsburg, right up the road, for sale, for a price I could afford.
See, there you go.
And I just moved on with life. And of course, I had bought a raft in the interim right before. Like, literally, I knew I needed another vessel to cater towards certain things. And there's stretches on the river here where you can't get a drift boat. Yeah, no. You can't go back in the Kettle Slough if it's below 4 feet with a drift boat. Ain't gonna happen. I can do it with my raft. That's why I want it. But it's just how everything works out. So now I had, no boat because I couldn't haul it. got a boat on order. Don't know, that's going to be here in July. And I had a month of time with bookings that I had to take care of. So I bought the boat, and yeah, life works in mysterious ways. But yeah. So now
2 new vans. I understand.
Now life's all good. I got 3 boats, and my wife thinks I'm absolutely nuts.
You've proven her true. Huh?
Well, and she's wondering when I'm going to sell old Woody, because I told her part of the deal was buying the other boat was that I had to fund a vacation for her with the funds from selling old Woody. But I've got a lot of attachment to that boat. Even if it just sits in my shop down there, it's like, it still is. It's the nostalgia of having a wood boat.
Many hours into that boat. That's a part of you.
That's the thing. I don't think I can get the money out of it that I feel like I should get the money out of it. It's not worth it.
The value to you.
Yeah. So we have a lot of kind of similar ways that you started things. Here in the area, you officially kicked the light on at the beginning of this season for your business.
I did.
What was the biggest misconception you had walking in here?
Biggest misconception I had walking in here was probably timing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought everything would take less time than it did.
Oh, yeah.
Everything takes 10 times longer and is not necessarily harder, just longer.
Well, speaking to a guy who started a podcast a year ago, I can tell you right now, yes, it all takes longer than anticipated. But getting to that end goal seems a little bit more bittersweet when you have to really earn it.
You know, it's been really a wonderful experience coming from the hospitality world and very much dealing with a clientele that's on a schedule. Airport, hotels workings, and timing and shuttle timing is very on time.
Mm-hmm.
And in this industry, as we know, we depend on so many factors, weather and timing of arrival here. We're only an hour and 15 minutes from the airport in Minneapolis, St. Paul, but things can change and it can take a minute to get here. And if there's traffic or whatnot. And
well, you know, my late minute phone calls,
you know, hey, we're here. That's the most beautiful thing, is being able to be flexible with that time. And I've got a staff on, and we've ramped up the equipment on the property as far as our shuttles, and we've 3 new vans, and
oh yeah, and they're nice
kayaks and things to make sure that we're here and we're ready for any kind of adjustment that needed to happen. And this next year, I'm really excited about being able to utilize what I learned last year to make this year even more fun for folks.
Oh, and there's some efficiencies that come out of that too. I've learned systems are great when they work. Systems suck when they don't work. But learning how to make them work when you need them to work, it's kind of, you have to get into it. You have to get through that learning curve. Yes. And once you're over that learning curve, even though technology sucks sometimes, usually things are operating a little bit more smoothly. So
we work on river time up here. So I just try to keep that in mind.
I have that "You're on river time" sign. It's a little sign. It's just painted. It says "You're on river time." It hangs above my door at the shop.
It's the truth. We're just on river time. We'll be here. And that's one of the things that's really great about the whole experience up here, getting to sneak away for a summer and truly dive into this place. I lived in Hudson, Wisconsin before. So growing up in Taylor's Falls, living in Hudson, now up here in Grantsburg, I've seen the river flow many days, and it's something that is surreal and available to everyone with the national park, both state, Minnesota and Wisconsin, and all the different preserves and Creeks Meadows and Fitch Lake. And
definitely something I want to touch on here in a little bit too, is just what else is in the area, because there's a lot.
There's a lot up here. It's a hidden gem that's just minutes from your doors. If you're, anywhere in the Minneapolis, St. Paul area, it's quick, fast to get up here for the day.
So we've chatted a little bit here. Why don't we dive into exactly, let the listeners know exactly kind of what it is you do here. Obviously, you do canoe rentals, you outfit, but what's the business model?
Business model here is we really want to experience the river, make sure that our customers are educated about how to use the river, what their experience levels are. This morning, I was talking to a gentleman from Maryland who's got sons flying in from all over the U.S. They're going to all meet in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and we're going to take care of them once they get here. We will do as much or as little as you need for your trip. You are looking for what we call a canoeber, and you've got all of your own gear and your own vehicle, and you just need a ride. We'll we'll do that for you. That's something that we're good at, and we'll put you in where we think makes the most sense and drop your car where it makes the most sense. All the way from that to folks that are flying in from Maryland, we're going to get their groceries for them, and we will make sure that they have everything that they need for their 6-day trip from Hayward down to Highway 70.
So outfitter is really a cornerstone in the name and the business. I look at you guys as an outfitter. I mean, you've accommodated just about anything I've asked. And I don't know that I've asked too many, long extended arm kind of, help me out here's, but you've met me at landings in the morning. I mean, didn't have to come here. We met right out there, shuttled my vehicle and made it super, super easy for my customers. And that's honestly one of the reasons I use you is because of the ease for my customers. You have a place here that there's people around, they can park their car here. I used to have some issues down here on the river. I actually didn't have any this past season. But the landings are remote, mm-hmm. and there's always that concern that, you might have a vandal or something like that. I've had taillights vandalized before and things like that. Again, not recently, a couple years ago, but
it's always a concern to, we have the things we're coming to do on the river generally cost a little bit of money, mm-hmm. and we look forward to spending that day on the river. And if you've got 2 guys that want to go out fishing and they're going to leave a vehicle at one end and do their own shuttling and so on, it's doable, but it eats up a bunch of your time. And your vehicles are sitting, or your boats are sitting, or your gear and tackle is sitting. And my favorite commandment of all time is "Thou shalt not tempt." Yeah. Number 11. Hey,
I like that one. And that for me as a guide, my job's in the hospitality industry as well.
Absolutely.
And I think that's where a lot of guides maybe miss the mark. Is you're a great fisherman, and you can take guys out fishing. But are you making sure they're having a good day, regardless of what the fish are doing?
That's right. And are they being educated? One of the things I found the most enjoyable, and probably one of the more surprising things also, that back to what you'd asked me, is being able to educate people about the river and the history of this park.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's a national park.
Yep.
And I got to be honest with you, I didn't know that when I grew up in Taylor's Falls, in the national park. It
didn't really dawn on me till I figured out I had to have a permit to guide on the river.
When the Department of Interior got involved in what we're doing, right?
Well, I never did anything illegal, but when I started digging into it was like, oh shit, I need a permit to do this?
A permit for everything.
That's why I spent a number of years doing it for free.
Well, and honestly, it's one of the nice things about using your service or my service is we have those things now. Mm-hmm. So anybody who wants to just show up with their own gear, their own whatnot, that's what we can do. You can help them, I can help them, and then they're covered with what we do.
Well, and you touched on the educational piece of it. It's a point to me that I find very important in my guide trips is to, you guys paid money to come out here. You're on this beautiful resource. Now you need to understand why it's beautiful and what other beauty are you not seeing here? Because I want you to be hooked. I want you to come back. I want you to spend your money up here. I want you to join the conservation groups that are making this landscape happen and stay and be fruitful and have all the wildlife here. That only happens through education. That only happens by casting a light on things and then allowing people to foster that care and love for what you're showing them. Now, you can lead a horse to water, you're not going to make them drink, but you can educate somebody enough that it gets the mind rolling, that hopefully at some point they return and care about that.
We're so fortunate that this pristine area stays so pristine because of the people who service this river, with the Wild Rivers Conservancy and the national park systems and yourself and myself. I know when we're at landings, if there's a wrapper on the ground, it's in my pocket before I leave. And, we educate our guests.
Did you tell the National Park Service you found that?
I did.
That was one of the things.
Say something.
Well, that was one of the things I was like, so you want me to take all this trash out and then you want me to report it too? Like I'll take it out, but you're going to ask me to get out, call somebody after that. I'm on to the next thing.
Probably on to the next thing. Yeah.
So it was kind of funny. I got a kick out of that one, but
we're pretty lucky here. I think they use us as a resource here for even, their landing and jumping off points here at Highway 70. So I tend to see quite a bit of the park guys that are taking
maintenance
care of
guys
the
and
maintenance
stuff.
guys. Yeah, they do such a great job around here of keeping everything.
So I've been always kind of curious. There's a few of these campsites around the river where there's not access by foot.
Yes.
Do they take jet boats out and with mowers and mow those from via boat?
What I was told is they have a drift boat that they take.
Oh, drift boat. Okay.
Yep, that they take over to those island campgrounds or campsites.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was always kind of curious because I'm like, the grass is mowed. I mean, how
are they doing that? Well, I was told it was weed whips, that they
Sure.
grab their whips and they
That
head out
makes
on the
sense.
drift boats and go. And this last year, there was a good solid 6 weeks, I think, where they let us know they weren't servicing those island spots because they couldn't get at them. However, I love the river enough and was fortunate enough to be able to camp on those sites during those times. And, the clientele that uses this river is so concerned about it that they're all in just great shape.
They are. And there's one or two of them that aren't marked that I really like the best. But I'll leave that for another conversation.
That's right. Those are the things we know and people want to find out.
Right. If you've been on a guide trip with me, we may have stopped at one for lunch. It's usually a pretty good stop for me.
And I agree with you. I've been really having a good time learning the different holes in the river and the places and the bends. And you and I have those conversations, and it's a fun river to learn because it's accessible on so many levels, but yet there are still those places that you can only get to if you know how to get there.
That and one of the things too, back to the whole adventure seeking part of me, I'm a little bit of an adrenaline junkie when it comes to, this kind of stuff. That's why I musky fly fish. It's why I take the hard road in life and some things, but the sites and the people who service it and the fishing that's here, it's unbelievable to the point for me that I don't think it's really difficult. Like if you're a novice angler or hell, just a beginner, the river offers so much from a conventional standpoint that you almost feel like you know it like the back of your hand.
Truly.
And then one rainstorm comes, flips it upside down on you and changes the whole river. And I mean, it happens every spring with I'm like dialed in. I know everything. I know where all the sandbars are. And then spring rolls around or we get a big dump of rain and not at all. And it doesn't always all change, but it always changes enough that you have to relearn things again. And it's just kind of a trial and error thing with the river that it's always in constant change. And that's what I do love about it too. You can go to some beautiful places like the Boundary Waters or whatever. It doesn't change as much as the river does. And that's, for me, one of the biggest reasons I love it so much, because people get stuck in these ruts and I just don't know how they do it in life. They go out and do the same damn thing every day, every year over year. I can't live mondanely like that. I need new things. I need adventure to seek. And again, that's one of the reasons I love river fishing in general, but this river it's so untapped and nature just takes its course, and it's really what nature serves up for you for the day. And you got to put together the pieces. And that's what I love about it.
I agree with you. The fact that it's been protected since 1968 just changes the aspect. There's 220 rivers now that are part of the National River Act. And in 1968, we were one of the first 8.
Mm-hmm.
And that whole river watershed has been protected to where you can do 40 miles of river and never see a cabin, never see another human, and we are 1 hour and 10 minutes from downtown Minneapolis. And to be able to be in the middle of nature that close to an international airport is incredible to me. I love the Boundary Waters. I've been there. It's
gorgeous.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
But okay, I'm not going to lie. I don't want to carry my canoe. I want to get in the river and I want to paddle and I want to steer and I want to get out of the river and camp and have a good time and get right back in. I don't want to carry my boat anymore.
Well, my wife feels the same way. So I'm the ox. I'm the portage bitch, so I don't like to do it myself. Yeah. I like to share that duty. I won't even go up there anymore if there's a metal canoe involved, period.
No. And the beautiful thing about the Boundary Waters too that people don't recognize or don't realize is that well, it's so close, obviously, but there's free campsites all along the river, and they've got picnic tables and hole toilets and grills and all the things that you need that are those big, heavy, bulky carrying items. So you can really make a light kayak trip for multiple days where it makes it, accessible to you.
Beth, we talked a lot about smattering of random things.
That's always the best.
Well, I tend to take people down a lot of rabbit holes. I can't bite my tongue long enough, I guess. With everything, and you guys being a full service outfitter, what is kind of your customer niche? Like who do you see coming in the door the most? So like describe to the listeners as to, maybe they might be thinking, this isn't for me, and catch them off guard. Cause I think a lot of people get themselves into a perception, right? I rent canoes on the river. Well, yeah, you do. And that's part of the job, but you're responsible for making sure people have a good time on the river too. The hospitality side of it, the campground out back, which we didn't discuss on. So what kind of people are you really seeing? Are they people from the cities looking to get out? What's the primary niche of the reason people are coming up here?
I think that there's really two different kinds of customers. We're busiest with our day tripper, okay. The person that comes up from the metro in the morning, we put them on the river, maybe 10 miles north of us here. Whether that be in canoes or kayaks or tandem kayaks or whatever their choice is. We talk about timing. We tell them about these really cool places they can stop and have lunches, things like that, maybe little fishing holes or places for the kids to get out and swim on a sandbar. And we drop them off. When they land, the beautiful thing about our business here, when they land, they just call us and say, we landed, and we come get you. So there's not that you have to be somewhere at 2:00 or you're going to miss your shuttle feeling. You really have the opportunity, or our customers, the opportunity to spend the whole day on the river. You rent with us, park here at our location. We drive you up north. You spend the whole day. We pick you up, and then you're back at home by 7:00 at night. That's probably our busiest customer. But I would say that where our niche really is in that 2 and 3 day trip.
Okay.
And that customer generally is somebody who's more experienced on a trip or a canoe situation or kayak situation, but generally doesn't know this river. I noticed a lot of folks last year with Canada was closed. We couldn't get in there. So there was quite a few folks that used to do the boundary waters, and then this opportunity opened up to them and they did this trip. But that 2 and 3 night trip is really probably where my biggest customer base is. That's a fisherman that wants to come out and, maybe make a 10-mile trip into a 3-day trip because they really want to fish that river.
Well, and when you got a canoe, you can paddle upriver too.
Absolutely.
And in this river, there are plenty of locations where the current dies out enough that you can do that without a big effort.
This is the truth. And, there was actually a time last year when I was out with my daughters. I've got 10-year-old girls, and we were canoeing, and it was actually easier with the wind to paddle upriver 1.5 miles than it was to go downriver 3. So
you don't have to tell me anything about wind. I hear wind, and I always cringe a little bit as a guide because that means I'm working twice as hard that day.
That does.
Keeping that boat straight for people is a tough deal. And when a drift boat catches a lot more wind than a canoe.
It sure does. The beautiful thing about a canoe on that day trip, or even those multiple day trips, is it does most of the work for you. When you're in a canoe, you get to be the guy in the back. All you got to do is steer. One hand for the fishing pole is pretty easy to have.
I like my 2 hands on the pole.
I got that one for the beer, so I'm not sure. But we do sell these nice little cooler attachments for your canoes that you can clip on, and always have that second hand available for that pole.
Do they float? Or do the coolers float? Are they like you clip on the side of the boat, or are they in the boat?
They're in the boat.
Okay.
It's just a little clip on, and it's inside your boat. You got somewhere to put your beer.
I'd have to look at one of those.
Probably put your logo on one, right?
Well, for me too, cooler space is always a hot commodity. I got to have it, but it takes away from available space for customers. So it's this dynamic that I have to play a little bit sometimes. And yeah, I'm always looking for.
This season, we're going to have some new cool things. There's actually a cooler that I've got on order. Hopefully it will get here in a timely manner, but it actually looks like a kayak. And it's a cooler that you tie to the back of your boat, and you just pull it behind you, and it can roll and float. And
Oh, now that
It's something that I plan on renting out to my customers, especially on those multi-day trips, because you have that opportunity to fill your boat with other things than that cooler. So
yeah, we'll have to talk too, because I'm working on a trip right now with backcountry hunters and anglers, which is a they're a conservation group, and one of the gentlemen that I took out last year is the Armed Forces Initiative director.
okay.
So he's responsible for basically putting together trips for veterans, armed forces guys, and they do like a dual skills camp kind of thing. So
Sure.
we're gonna take 4 guys out on the river for an overnight float trip, and you talk about scenarios like that where I got 3 guys in my boat. I'm gonna have both my vessels on the river. Gentleman's gonna row one of the boats. He's been with me twice now this past season, and I think he figured out enough that he thinks he can take a couple guys. We'll see. We'll see what boat catches more fish. I
like
don't.
a little competition is always a friendly, fun thing.
Don't think he realized. I love him to death. Trevor's a great guy, but I don't think he realized how much there's a skill. And it's to reading the river and then looking what you have up front of you for the next 100, 200 yards and really aligning that boat so you don't have to really row hard, but so that the boat's steady, straight, and in the right spot. Like there's an art form to it, and I'll tell you, I've had plenty of guys in the front of in my boat. We're like, all right, man, you rowed all day. Like, do you want to fish? You want to row? Yeah, I'll row for a little bit. And then they get in the rower seat. They have no idea what they're doing. I mean, you row a regular rowboat and it's fine. Like, it's the same concept. It's just everything's backwards. You're rowing upstream instead of downstream, and everybody just can't. Not everybody gets that concept. It's kind of amazing. It's just like row the boat. Just row it. Like instead of you looking at the front of the boat, you're looking at the back of the boat. Just row like you're going upriver. And I'm amazed at how many people can't get it. But then you throw on, putting the boat in the right spot, holding it at the right speed for a fly fisherman. I kind of gave up.
Yeah.
It's just like, this isn't worth it. Like, I want to fish really bad, but you're not at the ability for me to fish the way I want to fish because you can't put the boat in the place I want to put the boat, or I want the boat,
That's why we need you, Bryan, because I can't put the boat where I want the boat either.
Yeah, I know. That's why I get paid the big bucks, I guess they say. It was part of the enlightening process for me of finding the joy in guiding, because I never have found anybody who could row my boat in a fashion where I could fish in the same way that I feel like I could put somebody else if I was behind the seat. And
Sure.
There's that paradigm, we're on the water here, and I can do this, and I actually find enjoyment in rowing the boat and watching people catch fish. It's not to the point where, I get frustrated or anything. Like, I'm more frustrated because they can't hit the spot that I put them on, And it's like, if I could only row and cast, like, this would be perfect, but I can't do it. So, which leads themselves to kind of a paradigm here with a lot of people that you get. I think people who enjoy canoeing as well. And then you get people who want to come fish and realize that they have to canoe.
Right. Right.
So there's this happy medium, I think, for me personally. Nothing against your business or canoes. I just won't fish from one anymore. I've been blessed with being enlightened at what a drift boat is like on the river, and I just won't go back. I spent plenty of years in canoes as a young man, and I've gone swimming way too many times to have learned and lost a lot of gear. That was one of the big things for me. It was like, wow, you got $1,000 worth of fly rods in the boat. Like, you dump it in the rapids,
It's a situation.
good luck trying to find them, So that was, that's why I ended up with a drift boat. But anyways,
The good news on this river is that, at least as I tell my customers, it's kind of a beginner river. So if a person does run into some problems, most of the river, you can stand up if you need to.
You can.
Obviously, there's plenty of deep holes with really nice big fish in them. But
Yes.
I have a lot of the customers too, we're talking about those day trips, are first time paddlers.
Yes.
And I get the question all the time, can my kid, how old does your child need to be? Things like that. There's cool different ways to look at it. You can bring your child, you can bring an infant canoeing truly. I mean, you need to have a life jacket on. Anybody under the age of 13. It's the law. They have to have it on 100% of the time when they're on that river. But you can have a small child in that duffer seat, as they call it, in the middle of the canoe. And my daughter was 8. She was paddling the river without issue in her kayak and helping in the canoe. So
yeah, there's only, I would say, one probably mile-long stretch of this river in this area where
it's a little technical.
Maybe a novice canoeer might, sweat under the collar a little bit. And I'm sure there's some gear below that rapids.
I'm sure there is.
I'm sure one of my rods has finally made it down to that hole at one point. It's been a couple of years since I lost it, but yeah, dumbass, When you go to throw the anchor in a drift boat, you usually want to set your rod down inside the boat, not outside the boot.
That's generally
still learning. Still learning one of the how big is this drift boat?
They don't make those rods to float.
I know. That was $100 down the drain. But with that, the novice canoeer, somebody, or even just a beginner, somebody who's never been in a canoe.
Yep.
I will tell you, as a guide who spends lots of time on this river, there is not a stretch that I would hesitate to send somebody.
I agree.
There's that one stretch by where the Kettle River pours in, and then the Boulder Garden after that it can be a little technical, and depending on what the water level's at, it can rip a little. I mean, it's the one part I actually really enjoy as a rower.
I do as well. I look forward to that. And if the kettle is high enough, I want to race the kettle every time.
Yeah, I've only been down there once. So this year I got into that guide swing of things. And when you're guiding, you have this time frame that you have to work with. And sometimes you got a full day, sometimes you got a half day. And the way the river was working last year with how low it was and how slow it was running, I couldn't do it in an 8-hour trip.
No, I
just could not. Hell, my brother and I were out in the river. We pulled in down to Nelson's Landing. Soderbeck. And I think it was 11:30 at night. We'd floated all the way from basically Fox Landing to Soderbeck in the dark.
Yeah.
We got a little addicted on this fish that came up and tried to eat my brother's muskie bait, and then we spent another hour trying to hook him again, and he did eat finally. And the second biggest fish of the season, I think he was like 44.5 inches.
Beautiful.
But yeah, that really caught us off guard with how low and slow the river was. And the sun all of a sudden hit the trees and it got dark real fast.
Real fast.
I was not paddling fast enough.
One of the things I want to do next year, and I'm very excited about it, we tried to do it in 21, but it just didn't work out with the fires in Canada and the smoke in the air and things on the evenings. But I really want to do midnight paddles.
Sure.
On the full moon. We would finish them up at midnight, but have those start, from the property based on what time that moon rises, and do some paddles. They're about an hour long, and come here and we paddle through the moonlight. It's beautiful up here. When that moon shines, you have moon shadows, and we absolutely can paddle and fish and have fun.
Absolutely. It gets bright up here in the summertime when you got a full moon, enough that, yeah, you don't need flashlights and things along those nature if as long as your eyes adjust. Yep. And there's some big fish that eat on those nights. I will tell you that. I've learned my lessons about some of the bug hatches that can happen out here. Holy cow, do the mayflies come off at night.
It's funny you should say that. One of the first things that we ended up needing to invest in quickly were bug nets for the evening, not for our customer, but for ourselves. Because what we do is when we close here, we close at 6:00. And when we close, I'm not going to lie, I love to hit that river to go try to catch myself some dinner. So yeah, bug nets were necessary early in the season.
I carry 2 of them in the boat. And that's because I didn't see it really here. And I haven't seen it on the St Croix as bad as some of the other rivers in northern Wisconsin and Minnesota. But, the fly hatch in the summertime can be bad.
It can be. This year was pretty good. I think that the dry weather assisted with the low amount of insect we had on the river. But one of the beautiful things about this area is, and I lake fished my whole life too, in cabins on lakes and so on. that standing water versus this moving water is such a difference when it comes to the bugs. So
it is.
If there's a concern, I mean, I bought all of this bug spray and all these bug things for the store when we first opened, and I have so much of it left. It wasn't needed, which is wonderful.
Yeah, I bought a 4-pack of deep offwoods, and I still have 3 bottles.
Exactly.
Yeah, I did not use nearly as much last season as I thought. And like I said, the black flies. I mean, I've been my wife will not go float the Flambeau River in June or July. I don't even know that she'll go up there at all with me anymore.
I love the Flambeau. It's actually a special place in my heart. I had a cabin on the Flambeau for 12 years. And
whereabouts?
Next to the Big Bear.
Oh, yeah.
And we were cabin 10.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite stretches of river.
It's beautiful. And I fished that river and loved that river, but the bugs were so bad in that area that my folks said, we're not coming back.
Yeah. Honestly, I hesitate to go up there in early summer. I usually go up I do an annual trip around August. And it's the deer flies start to wane. But yeah, I made the mistake of bringing my wife up there a few years ago, and I want to say it was around the 4th of July, before or after. And
nope,
she was miserable, absolutely miserable. But she'll come out here and float the St Croix anytime. I won't even think about bugs. So
it's pretty incredible here.
I'm not going to say that there's no bugs, because there's bugs, but
thank goodness, because otherwise those fish would have nothing to eat.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of forage in the river. But, from the black flies and the horse flies and like the deer flies, the stuff that people, I think, really associate northern Wisconsin and rivers with, or just being at the lake, you just don't have it here. I've never had swarms of black flies like you have out on the Flambeau. Never had swarms of horse flies or deer flies like you do on the Flambeau. So there's been days out there where you might have an hour or two where something comes off, but you go down the river a little further and they're gone.
Right.
I've never been ran off the river like I have up in other rivers. It felt like I could be carried off the river.
I was just going to say, you run right off that river when they pick you up and carry you away.
Yeah, that Camp 41 to Hervis is one of my favorite floats of all time in Wisconsin.
It is a beautiful stretch of river. Northern Wisconsin offers so much to everyone, and I really have had a good time with marketing this property with the former ownership. In the sale mode for their last few years, certainly marketing wasn't something that they really did, and I want to make sure that this place is known, and we're moving towards being able to book online and things like that, and get up here and see the river, and we'll give you the maps and we'll tell you all about the area. And
well, let's talk a little bit about the area, because we touched on it a little bit, but I think trying to create that wholesome symbiotic relationship from water to land and the critters that encompass that, I think is really important to this area.
Oh, we're so lucky.
You can say that about anywhere, but the National Park Service and the reasons to why they created this as a national scenic riverway, I think, are part of the crux as to what's so cool about up here.
I agree. When you drive you upriver, and obviously you're on the roadside half your trip and the riverside the other half, because you got to get up there. The drive upriver or south actually are beautiful. I mean, you're driving through the national park, you're driving through Creeks Meadows, which is 35,000 acres of protected area. It's actually the largest protected space in Wisconsin.
I think you mentioned that to me on one of the trips up for shuttling this summer, and I was amazed at that. And I started digging in, and there's a lot of really neat, just historical facts and things around Creeks Meadows in itself.
Truly, there's actually a beautiful visitor center just at the kind of the entry to Creeks Meadows. It's definitely worth a stop. It's open 7 days a week in the summer, and they've got a staff over there that will give you guided tours and information, and they have programs that run all year for education with kids, groups. And
have you seen have you been up there recently?
Yes.
Did you see the sharp tails, the statues?
I did not.
You have to take a walk. I believe it's at the South Visitor Center here, and I want to say it's in between the Visitor Center and I can't remember the county road. I just know it.
County F.
County F, yeah. I just know where to hang a right and a left. But I think it's between the county road and the Visitor Center, and actually the Wisconsin Sharp-tailed Grouse Society One of their long-term board members passed away last year or the year before, and through the I don't know if it was his trust or there was some donations. I'm not exactly sure how the funds came about,
Sure.
but they had done that in memory of I think his name was Jim. Again, I'm not 100% plugged in on the history of the Wisconsin Sharp-tailed Grouse Society. I just know that I'm more in tune with what's going on right now.
Absolutely.
But they had gotten those done sometime this spring, and I think this summer they installed them over there. And they're done by an artist. They're sculptures of a couple sharp-tails dancing, and they're fairly large. And it's just they're really neat little pieces.
Definitely
so you have to check them out. But you got Crex Meadows, and Crex was donated by
Crex Carpet.
Yes, because of the cheatgrass.
The original, I guess what I understand is that the original carpet base was pretty much all came from Crex, and
like a good majority of it in the country.
Nationally, yes, that's what I understand as well. And then that land was donated back once the production of more of a plastic-based product was available, and they donated, like I said, 35,000 acres. And Crex Meadows has such great information on how they're trying to make that land managed to the best of its ability. So there's different kinds of ways they're managing different acreages and controlled burns and real neat, fun things the community can get involved in.
Well, and you touched on something that is some of the listeners of the podcast probably will gravitate towards because they've heard from other guests. But Crex, and actually I think more, I don't know what they call it on the St Croix here, but it's the Big Bend down south of the 70 here, where it goes 90 degrees east. Yep. Basically from about that geographical point all the way up to Ashland.
There's nothing.
Well, it's the Northwest Sands. So it's the sand barrens of Wisconsin. So you've got a unique ecological system within another system, more or less. So jack pine, talking very arid soil, sandy soil. You got basically Lake Grantsburg that was here. And all of that has led into, we were talking about Sandpoint Wells when it came in here. You got accessible, beautiful drinking water.
Yes.
Well, when you're down on the river, basically, does it start north of Norway? I don't know, the Seeps areas?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Does it start north of Norway? It's all south of 77. Mm-hmm. It's basically, majority of it's between 77 and 70. There is some to the south, but they're just gigantic Seeps areas where there's all these spring-fed creeks coming into the river.
So much fun this year with the river being down. You could really see where these access points were to this beautiful fresh water.
Oh yes,
it was a good
just
time for us to
pumping
find
out of
where they were coming from,
the riverbank.
Yeah,
and some of them. I mean, obviously, I'm trying to think. Is it Fox has got a really nice, beautiful creek that flows down to it. Actually, is a registered trout stream. Mm-hmm. So there's a few of those around, but a lot of that water is just coming straight out of these little tiny seeps areas that has been filtered by the sands here in Lake Grantsburg and the barren sands that migrate into the river. So anybody who's interested in sharptails from my podcast, well, they should know the river as well, because there's a holistic symbiotic relationship with the river and the topography and the geographic area here. We wouldn't have the barrens area if it wasn't for this river, because the barrens got pushed up with the glacial till, and the river then was carved out by the melting of some of that glacial till.
Right.
And so it's a really interesting centuries and centuries, tens of thousands of years it's been developing to get to this point. And you mess around with one little thing and that whole relationship changes. Crex Meadows years ago had a large population of sharp-tailed grouse. There's probably more ruffed grouse now today than there are sharp-tailed grouse in Crex Meadows. They're managing it, in different ways. But controlled burn is one of those things that you mentioned, and it's a huge part of managing the riverway and managing the acreage that leads up to the river. This area is full of jack pine and is a very arid landscape and used to be on fire all the time from lightning strikes
Right.
until we moved around and started developing and we cut everything over. I mean, the river was carrying logs up until 1912.
Right.
That's, I just recently did a presentation for Trout Unlimited down in River Falls, or local chapter on the river here. And diving into some of that history was just amazing. There's not a lot of other rivers that have that kind of history. It's there, but it's not captured. It's not available for you to just dive in and read. You know, all these rivers were highways back in the Indian era and the fur trapper era, and were even up until the steamboat era. You know, I mean, hell, the bridge cross or the landings here were ferry roads.
Absolutely true.
I mean, the Soderbeck family ran a little wooden ferry, or the Nelson family ran a little wooden ferry across the river right there. You know, I mean,
Soderbeck brothers.
And then the Nelson family too. Those were the two big ferries up here, right?
Yep.
Which is just amazing. I mean, I remember stumbling across the fact that the first bridge across the St Croix was like 1856.
Sounds about right. I was reading in.
Do you know where it was? You gotta stab where it might have been.
I would say maybe at the Snake River Landing.
You'd think so, or you'd think maybe even up here at 8 or closer to the cities. It was St. Croix Falls. In 1856 is when they put that first bridge in.
I literally read an article on that bridge earlier this week and talking about how it was a toll bridge. And when it opened, it cost $5 for one person to go one way on one horse.
Sure, maybe it was 5 cents.
No. Oh, sorry. In today's inflation.
Yeah. Okay.
Today, so what it costs today would be $5 to go one way with one man, one horse.
Yeah, it was. I remember reading something about it. It was pennies back then, but yeah, still. I mean, I remember going, well, "That's a lot of money for back then," you know. And so you didn't. Not everybody just crossed the river. You had to have some coin to cross the river.
I feel I should have known the answer to that question, being a Taylor's Falls kid.
Yeah, that's why I asked. I've caught a few people up with that one. That was kind of an interesting fact. So if somebody wants to come up and spend the weekend up here, maybe they're not up for doing a 3-day trip on the river and spending a night on the river, but they want to stay in the area and maybe spend a day at the river and see some of these other sites. You've got a campground out back.
We do.
Got power, electric.
We have electric, limited electric. Most of our sites are pretty rustic,
primitive
sites,
kind of site.
Mm-hmm. There is going to be some expansion going on in 22-23, but not in full season.
Sure.
We will be bringing in full setup campsites, so we'll have full service, which will be great for that person who's just coming through for the night and wants to spend one day and keep going. But the campground we have now has 15 sites, and we'd love to rent it out also to groups, just one large group.
Sure.
Quite a few groups of, Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts will come, and the night before they go out on the river, they spend the night with us. And then in the morning we load up and get them upriver, and, they may stay here or spend a night on the river somewhere. And
sure. Yeah, we'll definitely be discussing that outing I have. I'm going to have a group of guys that are going to need a place to sleep off river one night. We'll do on river the next night. So we might take advantage of the campground out back.
We would love to have you. It's a great place to be. It's nice and quiet over here. It's a really unknown little gem, truly.
It is. And to speak to what else is around here, I'm a fishing and hunting guide. There's a lot of hunting opportunities around here. Public land is definitely not short-handed. There's a ton. We talked about Crux Meadows, mentioned Namacog and Barrens.
Right.
We got Fish Lake, Governor Knowles State Forest. You've got, just taking a stab, probably 20 state natural areas.
There's got to be
around the river here. And even within the national park, you can still hunt.
Absolutely.
Which is really neat. I mean, people, I think I used to go up to Voyageurs National Park a lot on Rainy Lake, northern Minnesota. And I quit going up there because I had to now fill out online on, whatever government.gov website to rent a campsite. I don't have to do any of that here.
You can't actually.
I know.
Which is even better.
Yes.
So those folks that are coming up here and they're like, oh, I need to reserve a site. That's a question for me all the time. How do I get a reserve a site on the river? Good news is you can't. Or on the trail system through, Governor Knowles has 40 miles of trails that are marked and there's campsites within that you can use. That's free.
St Croix River Trail, I think, is the name of the trail.
And it's free to, you do need a pass for that, but that's complimentary. You just need to go to the DNR building and get a trail pass for Governor Knowles. But there's all of that available to you without the worry that it's all booked up.
Well, and
because it's first come, first served. And knock on wood, in all of my years, I have never had a problem finding a site.
I've had one time.
One? Okay.
One time. And it wasn't because there were people. I mean, it literally had nothing to do with the fact that it was the fact that I had never been on that stretch of river and we blew past the campsite we were going to stay at. And voila, there was nothing left between there and the landing. So we pulled out.
So you pulled out. Yep.
Yeah. At dark, slightly after dark. I shot those rapids up on 77. I forget what the hell they're called. Whatever the landing's called there at 77. Thayer's. Yeah, Thayer's Landing. So Thayer's Rapids. I was like sweating. This is like the second time out with a drift boat ever. And woody, So at that point, I was still really, really concerned about running into anything. And I saw them coming over the highway, and I'm like,
oh boy.
I'm like, I can do that, but it sure be nice to do it in the morning. That was the plan, fish, sleep on the river, do the rapids and with morning light. No, that didn't happen. Did them in the dark. There's been a fair amount of exploring this river after dark that was not planned.
Not plan A.
Yeah, and that's one of the, I guess, cool things. I again, back to the adventure element. Like, you shove off, you're on the voyage.
Absolutely. And, the cell phone coverage and things like that, I get asked those questions. Does my cell phone work on the river? Well, thankfully, no. It's my answer.
Yeah.
There are places, if you're in a need to access someone or there's an emergency, you certainly can get a service at some points in the river. But the bottom line is you really are disconnected. We drop you off and you are in the middle of the national park until we pick you up.
Yeah. I've taken a few phone calls from people who wanted to book trips and getting them to understand that concept of, okay, we're going to start at point A and we're going to take out at point B. And they hear me and I think they grasp it, but it isn't until they actually step foot in the boat that they're like, oh, like, we can't call this thing early. No. Like, if you're done fishing at 6 hours and we're still 2 hours from the landing. So this is a full on commitment. There's no, hey, I don't feel good, we got to go back to the landing. And I think that's somewhat off-putting for some people, but I also think it's very attractive for others. So it's kind of this weird balance of, you get people who are maybe concerned about not having cell signal down on the river. And then they get over that and they go out there and have the best damn time of their life. So I don't want to come off in a way that, hey, it's somebody who is worried about cell signal or worried about first come, first served basis camping. Like, these things exist. Yes, they're something you need to take into consideration, but they definitely shouldn't sway you from making a decision to come up here. There are plenty of campsites, and all the campsites on the river are designed for group camping. That's one other thing that I think people don't understand. Not every single one of them is designed or has enough space to really outfit two big groups. But if you're out there with one canoe, 2-3 people in it, every single campsite has enough room
for 2 tents.
For at least 2 tents. I know of a couple of them that have they're almost like tiered. They have, a group that could camp here and a group that can camp there, and you might share a picnic table and a fire ring. Some of them might even have their own.
And we'll always make a point based on the size of your group and how long you're going. We'll help you plot out. We recommend, this set of sites for your first night stay, this set of sites for your second night stay. And I was speaking with someone
and you're saying sets.
Yeah,
mm-hmm. So it's
not just one, but here's 5 or 6 places I would recommend for you to camp tonight and 5 or 6 places I would recommend for tomorrow.
And to add icing to that, you mentioned it earlier about not seeing anyone on the river.
Right.
I tell almost all of my clients, we will put in here, float to here, and we may not see another soul.
More
And
often than not.
More
you will
often than not. Hell, I only think I saw 2 other drift boats out there all summer.
And one of the times I was with you.
Yes. And I saw those guys actually quite a bit that week.
Did you?
There were a couple retired guys from town here.
Oh, that's fun.
One of them's a teacher, and I forget what the other guy does. We ended up chatting quite a bit.
That's fun.
Those bastards caught a 50-inch muskie.
Did they?
Right in front of me and clients.
I was just going to say, because they put in right ahead of you, too. Sure.
Yeah. And we ended up getting a few muskies that day, but I still was not able to talk to them afterwards because where they caught that muskie, I really scratched my head on how they were. I've caught muskies there and I fish that spot regularly, but just how they were fishing for those muskies, I don't know how they did it. They were using live bait. They were using big suckers. Sure. And there's just a lot of current there. So it's, how do you not kill your sucker? And that's what I don't know. I question how those guys, how long they were there, what they were doing. Because when we came around the bend, all it was, holy cow, here he is. And then you see the damn thing rocket out of the water. And then they were trying to pull their boat off the side and both had gotten out. And as we kind of drift by, so I rolled over a little closer. Yeah. They know I guide, so they're pretty cool guys. I like them, but those are local boys.
Yeah,
and then I seen the Grantsburg associate guys once in a while. Yep. But they tend to put in at like Norway and go upriver. Yep. They motor up, which I won't do to my clients. It's not 2 hours worth of time that you're paying me to not do what you want to do. That's why I use you. Okay. You drop me in, boom, my clients are out and we're fishing. And you make my life and my client's life a hell of a lot easier and more enjoyable. Because we've got this central location. You tell them, try to meet a client down at Fox Landing. Cell signal don't work. They're not going to find it because once you get off the county road, your cell phone don't work. So unless you downloaded the actual Google instructions on the map, you're not going to get there. I mean, most people I find are too reliant on their GPS.
It'll take them right to our parking lot and you can meet them here.
Well, exactly. And again, secured parking and then just, hey, they might have forgot something. So you've got everything here. You got everything from candy bars to, water on up to if they want to, buy equipment for the boat.
Always get those Father's Day gifts too.
Yeah. So you never know. I'm a big support the local economy person. And if I bring my client in here and they buy something from you, like that's a good thing. I'm not losing out on a sale. I'm not selling anything. They're already booked me. Right. So if I can bring that in, and on top of that, I like to teach. That's a big passion of mine when I go guiding is I get a lot of people who are not at my skill level. I'm okay with that. That's actually preferred because now I have something I can share and give. And that's where I really excel. So just being able to have that environment where you're here, there's all this stuff. We go up, we learn something, we come back and kind of, it's a closing point for me. A lot of these guys, I've had them happen where, this summer, a couple of the clients followed us up, we had them park at the takeout, and the relationship I walked away with from those clients is totally different than the ones that we actually got to ride together on the way back here. It was just an extra 15 minutes to decompress and talk about the day and talk about what they learned. And that 15 minutes just makes the difference. I don't know. I had 2 trips this year where I felt like
just didn't get that close.
It didn't have the right closure. Like they were just kind of off the boat, went to the car. We did our thing. They paid me and
off you go.
Off they went. I hope they book again this year, but again,
well, and don't forget, if your guys park here and they happen to get a little fishy and they've got a nice dinner they've got to go to, we do have shower services here available too. So there's always that. If you want to end your day and you want to come back here and you've got somewhere you need to be and you need to not look like you were fishing all day, we can help you with that.
That's a good thing. Those are all those corporate, partnerships of mine that
Right.
those bigwigs got to get back to the office.
And speaking of that, that's one of the things we really want to do in 22 is some
You mentioned that too.
corporate groups. My background being in meeting planning and events and things like that, that's my cup of tea. And I really want this experience to be, you got 10 guys 10 people that want to go spend the day on the river or spend the day up here. We'll come pick you up at your business. If you work in downtown Minneapolis, or you work in Shoreview, wherever that is, we'll come to your business. We'll pick you up in your parking lot and we'll have you on the river 2 hours later, spending the day with Bryan and back in your office by 4 p.m.
Or paddling themselves.
Absolutely.
And that's the other reason I like to bring people in here is back to that teaching point. I look at my guide business as an opportunity to instill some of the passions that I have in life onto other people. Not that I'm like trying to, stamp the forehead of you've been ingrained with Bryan's passions. I'm just trying to inspire other people, to have as much passion about something that I do. And I do that through kind of teaching both about fishing and how to be more successful, learning what you've learned here so you can step and repeat it in another area. And then the history and trying to tie them all in. But then they start here and they finish here. So the big goal, and obviously, I'm in business to make money, but at the end of the day, I sleep better if I know that those customers came out, had a successful day, learned enough that they can call you and come back up here and fish on their own.
Right.
That to me is a success. And I can't get that with my client. I can't give the full circle, that symbiotic relationship, if I don't start and finish here. It just doesn't work. You have allowed, you just put it in because it's here, because you're here, your service is here, and finish here, start here. They know what they learned out there. They could come back.
Right.
And that's enough. That's just it's enough to hopefully light that fire, because at the end of the day, this isn't a huge community up here. I mean, you're not 100,000 people.
1,300 in Grantsburg.
I was going to say, I don't even think you have another zero on, there's not 10,000 people up here.
1,300 is our populace up in this nice little corner of the woods.
The amount of wealth that's here, it just isn't in huge numbers.
There's, as you said, the economy is growing. Grantsburg's got such great revitalization going on with Brickfield Brewery in town. Definite must stop. They've got excellent beer made from this wonderful water off of this river. We've also got fun things like the Pink Squirrel, which is a thrift store that opens 5 days a month. It's open this weekend, as a matter of fact.
I didn't realize, honestly, I saw the name years ago. I thought it was a bar.
You're not alone.
And I went downtown this morning. Yeah, I'm like, I'm going to spend a couple bucks. I'll get a cup of coffee downtown. I like good coffee every now and again. And if you don't go in and support those businesses, the next time you want to have a good coffee up here, it's not going to be here.
Won't be here.
So I drove downtown and Pink Squirrel. I took a picture because in fly fishing, especially for trout, there's a fly called the Pink Squirrel. So here I'm thinking it's a bar. I was going to send it out to my Instagram for all my fly fishing buddies.
Come hit this bar up.
I walk past it and I look inside and I'm like, it's a damn an antique store, and that was kind of funny. I got a kick out of that one.
Yep. You're not alone. The name is very fun. It definitely brings some conversation. When that store is open, those 5 days a month, they put a pink squirrel at the end of my driveway.
I saw that too.
And since it's open, it's here this week, and it always gives a conversation to my customers.
Well, and with Grantsburg, when I first started coming up here, you could almost sense the depressed community around. There was just money that wasn't coming in. And that's changed a lot over the last 5 years.
Absolutely.
There's development going on. And like we touched on, this stretch of highways had its curses of businesses that don't look to be open.
Certainly. And what I think a lot of people miss is that Grantsburg is not on Highway 70.
No,
You see the grocery store, you see the gas station, you see the closed businesses, but you have to take a left. You've got to get off the beaten path. Come to the downtown area. The Wood River runs right through town. It's absolutely beautiful. We've got
there's a little flowage there, but
flowage with the wood
park, with the park there.
Memory Lake Park hosts the watercross.
Oh, do they really?
Every July, it's the third weekend in July. It's an international watercross event, and they race snowmobiles on Memory Lake.
I don't know why I've never caught that before. You
definitely need to come up third week in July every year.
I'm up here fishing. I literally don't know how I've never caught that before.
And
But see, that's the thing. Like, I'm up here all the time. In the minute that I spend a little extra time, I uncover all this stuff. That's kind of my point to where we're trying to go with a lot of this stuff is there's not just the river. There's not just renting a canoe from Beth. There's a lot here in this area that you can spend a weekend and not have to be on the river the whole time.
absolutely. And if, folks that are interested in birds, this is an incredible part of our country.
It is.
Truly. The flight migration path that comes through here is something I've never experienced. And again, I grew up in Taylor's Falls, but the birds aren't in Taylor's Falls. The birds are in Grantsburg, and that 30-mile difference makes tens of thousands of sand cranes come through here every year.
Oh, yeah. Tundra swans here.
And the swan population, we actually have quite a few swans that stick around
Residents, yeah.
year-round.
Oh, yeah.
So that's fun.
Between here and Amory, where I'm at,
Mhm.
it's just a bunch of pothole lakes.
Yes.
So you have all these big marshes, you have the riverway, and then you've got these pothole lakes kind of dribbling down into, I think if the birds were migrating, they'd probably stop there and then maybe move on down towards Lake Pepin area.
Mhm.
But yeah, the amount of tundra swans, trumpeter swans actually,
Yes.
that we're seeing on a regular basis all year round, even down by me, is amazing. But then you come up here and those bastards are in my favorite muskie hole every morning.
Just going to say, if you are at Fox's Landing, you will see swans. They're
Now you're giving everybody my favorite muskie hole.
shoot.
I'm not that way. If people haven't learned that so far, I'm like the one that likes to beat down the standard fisherman, protective and not share knowledge kind of mentality. I don't understand the muskie fishermen to a certain degree. I get, some of it, but the other, you catch the damn thing and you put it back in the river. Like,
That's the thing.
the whole reason you put it back is so somebody else can catch it. I mean, isn't that catch and release?
That's the plan.
So I don't understand why people get bent out of shape so much about that.
No, you and I have a good time in the summer, well, all season, talking about where those fish are, and they move. So we have to keep looking for them.
Yeah, they definitely served me up a little bit of humble pie this fall. That low river just really changed the dynamic for the fall.
It did. I'm really looking forward to a season of not high river, but average river height would be pretty incredible this year.
I'll even take a little high.
Yeah.
I will. I actually, as a guide, you get any kind of quote unquote high water and nobody else shows up.
Right.
None of the other drift boats shows up. What I find so funny is when the water level is perfect, there's drift boats. If it's either too high or a little low, you don't see anybody. And the amount of time that the river actually sits in perfect flow is so little. It's not even funny. Like you come off May and it's high, and then you hit June and it starts to come down, and you get some of that rain, it comes back up, and then it does this waffle and wane until we kind of hit that summer drought more or less. And then it just tanks until we get fall rain.
Oh,
And
for me, I'm lucky. My favorite thing to do is grab my morning coffee and go down and check the river, because every single day it is different.
it's amazing how much it fluctuates in one day.
It can it does, and it has changed trips on the daily basis. So, the ebb and flow of the river and the ebb and flow of people's trips. We're really happy to work with you on where we're putting you in and taking you out right up until when you're getting in the van. Because of that, there's stretches that become far more desirable with a foot higher or a foot lower river. And
Even
it'll change
6
your day.
inches can make a difference.
Absolutely.
So speaking of that, how can people best find you? I'm going to include your contact information, website and stuff in the show notes, but what's the best way to reach out?
Info@wildriverpaddling.com.
Okay.
Probably the best way. Give us a phone call. We're at 715-463-2254. And our website is wildriverpaddling.com. There's going to be the ability coming up to book your trips right online. We're not there yet. We're getting there, year 2. But there's a lot of information on that website that'll get you in touch with us, and we can absolutely design a trip that is perfect for you, your buddies, your wife, your kids.
Yeah. And even if you're not the type of person that likes to hire a fishing guide, you can still hire me for a day. I can teach you a lot about the river, and you can come back up and rent canoes all summer long from Beth.
Absolutely. There's something to be said for a guided tour. I know that when I travel to places I've never been, the first thing I do is try to get a guided tour of the area, and then I figure out what I'm going to do on days 2 and 3 of my vacation. I can learn about the area. I'm probably going to change what I'm going to do.
You're a little different than me, but I'm a stubborn son of a bitch. I like to go about it, I the hard way. I have to learn things myself. Maybe it's why I became a guide, because I beat my head up against the wall enough that I wanted to short circuit people from having to, figure it out.
There you go.
So what's your peak paddle season?
We're open from April to November. Weather dependent, river dependent. Last year I had folks out on the river on April 6th, and I had folks out on the river on November 10th. So it's a pretty broad season. The height of the season obviously is Memorial Day to Labor Day. That's kind of this part of the country. That's when we really run hard. The peaks though, people say, oh, is there going to be somewhere to camp on a Saturday, or do you have things on a Saturday? We do. And there's always availability. The majority of our day trippers are weekends, but those 2 and 3 day paddlers, they're every day of the week. So we're open 7 days a week, Memorial Day to Labor Day, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Outside of those holidays, we're open, and we will absolutely do trips that are specified to the people, but based on kind of availability, river, and so on, when the park lets us get out there.
Well, and so your peak season falls during kind of summer and kids' vacation time. Majority of your staff here in the summertime is high school kids or college kids. So you have a lot more staff and resources to really cater to people at that time of the year.
Yes.
However, you mentioned you're available outside of that. If you're listening to the show and you're kind of still scratching your head on when Beth's available, just call her.
That's right.
That's how you and I got hooked up. I heard you bought the business. I called you, and we started making it work ever since then. You've been more than accommodating for me. So I can only imagine if you got, people renting your equipment and everything else. And
we want to make sure that
you're very accommodating
when you can,
yeah.
And if that means we got to open a little early or close a little late, we do that. If that means that we need to take away or add things to your trip, we'll do that too. It's a great place to live and work. And you mentioned the staff that I have here. My staff's been training me in all year. Most of these guys, I've got some guys that have been working here. Now this is their 4th, and coming into 22 is their 5th season with me. And staffing is such a struggle nationally right now on every level.
Yep.
I feel so blessed to have the team here that I do.
Well, and let's just flat out say it. I mean, what's around here for high school kids to work?
Right.
There ain't anywhere. There's nothing up here. I mean, literally, there is not a plethora of jobs. Like on our south here, high school kid wants to go get a job. You just go down the block, knock on doors. He's going to find a job.
Right.
Up here, there's not so much. There's not so much opportunity for those kids. So not only are, they helping you out, but they're helping you, you're helping them out and giving them an opportunity for a job, giving them some structure over the summer, and allowing them an opportunity to earn some money, which those opportunities just don't exist in high degree up here.
The beautiful thing is we are a seasonal business, and our season is when they are available.
Yes.
And it's a fun place to work because we're going to be outside all day, and we're going to play on the river, and I'm going to pay you to canoe so that this river. And I'm going to mention it because we're talking. I want to hire some folks that are some vets. It's really important to me. The staffing model that I am in need of for 22 is I would like somebody who is not in high school and wants to work 20 hours a week and come and do some weekday stuff with us. And it's a great place, great environment. And then to have that interaction with the high school kids, I think it's a great environment for everyone.
We might have to talk because I not booked every day during the week. Might be looking for some extra cash this summer. But no, I would much rather see you hire a vet than hire me. So they typically need it more than I do it sometimes. And I would, if I was a vet, man, I'd love nothing more to spend my time up here.
Anything that we can do. There's a great community up here, and I know that we're going to have a good time coming into 22.
Anything else big that you want to highlight here as we kind of wrap things up?
The biggest thing is we really just want you to come and play. Come up to the Northwoods and experience the St. Croix River Valley and all that it has to offer.
So I guess in closing here, I kind of probably threw you a little off guard with this question, but Can you give the listeners a general idea of what kind of cost commitment it would be to come up, get a canoe, have you do the shuttle, kind of just show up and take you out for the day? What,
Sure.
roughly? I mean, it all depends on obviously how far your canoe costs are fixed cost. And so you can put a pretty good stab on it.
The way that I would say is, it's about $50 a person for my shortest trip.
Okay.
That's probably the easiest way to put that. Now, that being said, the more people that you bring, the larger your group, those prices come down.
Sure.
Because the more vessels that you rent from us, more opportunity we have to discount.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you've got canoe racked trailers, so you can haul 6-8 canoes at a time?
You can do 8 canoes at a time.
Yeah.
And my shuttles range in seating capacity from 7 to 15. So that's where we're at with a singular trip. And the more people you bring, the less that it costs you. And we always are very happy to work with nonprofits. Our Boy Scouts, our Girl Scouts, our different organizations and associations. It's important that we have them experience this river. So we'll always do that with a little bit of a different price structure in mind.
Sure. I'll have to definitely keep that in mind as well, because I'm working with a couple conservation groups, just the goal of getting kids outdoors.
Absolutely.
And I think there's potential for a good outing here.
I think so too. It's one of those really fun places, and I want to make this a unique environment where you've got 16 folks that want to come up. You're going to rent my campground, start your night here, have the whole place to yourself. We get you upriver. We tell you where those spots are that you can camp with 16 folks, and you hit those up and have a whole nice weekend.
So lastly, you are servicing the St Croix, the Namakagon, from Hayward to Taylor's Falls is the kind of bread and butter of the riverway. What is, if somebody's listening from the Twin Cities and wants to come up here and wants to take a day trip and they want to maybe just dig into the river a little bit, what is kind of your standard day trip for a group of people? Is it kind of where I go in up at Norway Nelson's and kind of come down here to 70?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. That's probably our most service stretch of the river is the Nelson Landing to Highway 70.
Okay. Like you mentioned earlier, and we've talked about many times, it is the most exciting stretch of the river.
You get a little bit of rapids.
Yep.
On a lower scale of rapids, but you get a lot of beautiful flat water, and the river moves at about 3.5 miles an hour. So you really don't have to do a lot of paddling. You legitimately can just steer your way down the river. Yep. Keep it pointed in the right direction.
Well, and let's just quickly touch base on that stretch. You've got, obviously the rapids, the river winds. There's a number of islands in that stretch. You've got the Kettle River Slough. Kettle River pours in there. You've got the Snake River comes in there. Just above that is the Yellow River that comes in. And just below is the Wood River.
The Wood.
So you have a huge convergence of water. And any fisherman knows when you have confluences and converges like that, there's fish there.
Absolutely.
And one of the coolest things about this river is that summertime, when all the lake fishing starts to die out, because you get done with the spring, early spring lake fishing. And as soon as the water temp gets warm enough, they kind of die off and fish go deep. That's right when things start to pick up here.
Absolutely.
That's when the smallmouth come off post-spawn and they just hammer anything. And the muskies start to eat better, start to fill their bellies after post-spawn. And so you've got the confluences, you got all the fish. You got some beauty too. You've got Sandrock Cliff area,
old paint mine.
There's some neat geological features from that river. There's, I can't remember what kind of rock it is, but there's a couple rock outcrops in that area that are not limestone sand rock. Mm-hmm. They're old, hundreds of thousands of year old rock. I wish I knew my geography and geology better. I could tell you what kind of rock it is. But there, so you've got neat geological features that crest in the river there and cause the river to bend. And do you know what kind of rock it is?
I don't. And I
want to say it's like dolomite, but it's not.
I do not. I know that the Grantsburg glacial lake is just such an amazing place that drops such huge boulders and just incredible rocks that are not from this area.
Yes.
All scattered through the riverways to
Volkswagen Beetle size boulders. I call them musky rocks.
They are, that is one of the most fun things on this river. And, it's funny because, as I said, the river is very shallow in many places, but all of a sudden you're paddling along and you look down and that rock is 10 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
And
that was a nice thing about the shallow river this year is I really learned a lot more about the river than I ever have.
Absolutely. I feel the same way.
I mean, there are spots on the river I never knew. I thought they were deeper than that.
Right. Or shallower on the other side.
Or vice versa. Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, there's spots that I've literally, I don't run a depth finder on my boat. Most of the river, you can see the bottom, and it's the deeper spots that are like, well, I wonder quite how deep it is. You maybe try to test how deep it is with your fishing pole or your bait. But then I don't, $40 musky bait sitting on the bottom trying to see how deep it is. And it's not such a good feeling for me. That's how I become very unprofitable quick. But once you hit Highway 70 here,
it's a different river yet again.
It's a different river yet again. So the point to all that is there's beauty in itself. There's beauty inside the beauty.
There is.
And then another layer of beauty. It's kind of like pulling back an onion. There's a lot here, and depending on how deep you want to go to learn it, you could spend a lifetime up here and still not scratch the surface between the river and all the wildlife management areas and everything else that's up here. It's God country.
It really is God's country, and I feel blessed to live here, and I hope that more and more people come up and
the icing on the cake, which we've mentioned throughout the whole podcast, is your hour and 15 minutes from the metro.
I know, it's incredible.
And that really, to me, was one of the gut things about starting my guide business was like, I don't see anybody out here. I mean, this river is underutilized as far as I'm concerned.
So underutilized.
And if I could just get a few more people to care about it, the money starts coming into the area and you see the positive impacts of that, but you just get people that actually care. I can't tell you how many people I took out last year who have been on this river at some point or maybe down by Stillwater. Mm-hmm. And they come up here and they're blown away. I
have had the same experience. I can't even count how many times.
So there's like 5 homes probably even between 70 and 77. It was like 5.
That's it.
Yeah. And I think 2 out of those 5 are uninhabitable because of the deeded access and the way things work. I think it could be the properties that were on the river could be left to the next of kin. So then the next generation, and then eminent domain comes in and they buy them out.
Well, in 1968, when they did the Riverway Act, they went to the property owners that were on the riverway and said, we're offering different land lease times. And the majority, 95, 98% of the folks did those land leases, and the majority of those have now been expired and the cabins have been removed.
Yep.
And actually 150 campsites along that St. Croix, the majority of them at one point were cabins.
Is that what it is? Okay. Mm-hmm.
And even if those weren't accessible by roads, those were cabins. And as the cabins were removed, then now those are our beautiful accessible campsites that we have. And we have families that come into the outfitter here that grew up and their cabin was on the river, and they'll say, I used to have the cabin by Soderback and now it's the site and we go and camp and stay. But that stretch of river you're talking about, those 3 cabins specifically, mm-hmm. I've met some of the folks that live there and they've said that you can't sell them, right? They cannot be sold.
Nope.
And those particular people did not become a part of the land lease. So as soon as they are no longer able to gift them to their family, those will also be gone. Mm-hmm. And we'll have no homes on that stretch.
Yeah, and I'm not much for the government coming in and taking your land. That's pretty core against my grain. But when you start to understand what else is here, like I said, the river's one thing, and the National Scenic, but the relationship it has to the landscape, I start to kind of break that down a little bit and go, somebody made a smart decision here.
It needed to happen.
And there's enough land out there in this country that, as long as they were compensated properly, and when the ink dried on that contract, people were happy.
Everybody felt good about it. It's a good thing.
It's a good thing. And I'll tell you right now, the benefits from what happened in 1968 when that was signed, it's amazing to see the resource we have.
This summer, they renamed a large stretch of the river after Walter Mondale for the Day-Use Park down by Willow River.
Sure.
Because of the impact that he had, and Gaylord Nelson from Wisconsin, the two of them. And the thing I find most curious about this river is the love people have for it that have lived on it. Walter Mondale lived on the river in Marina and St Croix most of his life, and it was important to him. And he saw what this area could bring to the whole country. And another thing we have that's real neat here is there's not a lot of farming.
No.
So this river is pristine because you don't have the runoff and you don't have the things that you have in other areas.
It's got a large buffer zone. And then on top of that, the way the geography works, and here at least on this side with the sandy soil, you just don't have it.
Right.
And you'll never have it because you can't grow anything. At least at like the Barrens area, it is a different animal to grow crops up here.
It is.
And because of that, you don't have the dairy farms, you don't have pesticides, you don't have the nitrogen, all the other things that you see in a lot of these other rivers in the country. I noticed that as well. Like guys like me, I can sit here and smile all day long, get goosebumps all day talking about the love for this river. And I see that in a lot of other people who are well connected to the river.
It's 227 miles of riverway that's protected by the National Park Service. And in that 227 miles, there's only 800 private property owners. And something like 85% of those property owners are from Taylor's Falls to Stillwater.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Most of it's south of Highway 8.
Definitely.
Yeah. Up here, I like I said, I put the boat in and I don't feel like I'm in Wisconsin or Minnesota.
Definitely in the middle of nowhere.
I feel almost more like I'm out west than I do in the Midwest. The Flambeau kind of has a little bit of that nostalgia as well, but there's still way more development on the Flambeau, and that's even a state forest. Mm-hmm. So this is unique, and we're blessed to have it. And I just want to get more people to love it as much as I do, so we can continue to have it in such a pristine nature and have people that care about it, because that's how we conserve these things.
Best way to enjoy them.
Mm-hmm. Well, Beth, I really appreciate you making time for me, and it's been a pleasure to sit here and bullshit with you face to face.
It's nice to see you when the snow is flying.
Yeah. You see me with a couple different layers on today. Well, although it was melting the last couple, which is awesome in January.
Get some ice fishing in.
I don't do that. Well, some of the podcast listeners might understand a little bit of it, but I was telling you, my bird season doesn't end until January.
That's
1st, right. Or January 31st. And I made a commitment to myself last year and commitment to my dogs. It's not fair to them. If it wasn't for the summertime, I wouldn't be able to guide. I just, with the commitment I have with the dogs and wanting them to be part of my business plan in the fall, there's only so much for me to go around every day. And so when hard water season starts up here, we have the convergence of all of my
everything
enjoyments, muskie fishing, deer hunting, and then bird hunting and everything the fall offers. So first ice usually hits around gun hunting. And that's about when Kansas starts to really ramp up its bird hunting season. So I told myself last year that if the ice fishing stuff didn't come out before bird season ended in Kansas, then it wasn't going to come out all season.
There you go. And
it's still collecting dust. And I kind of went through, New Year's this year going, I think we're going to do the same thing again. Mm-hmm. It's just so much preparation for this upcoming season. There's only so much time I can spend with my dogs. And at some point, you got to get all the computer work done. And Lord knows I don't want to do any of that come August, September. I got to get my guide season all booked out, all the crazy little things that nobody really sees when you're a guide. The dog work, everybody, I show up with a dog and they're like, oh yeah, he's a nice looking dog. Well, they don't understand. I got to feed the damn thing 365 days out of the year. It's like same thing with guiding on the river. Great. I can row a couple days a week, I can row every day of the week during the summer, but at some point the tax guy comes and he goes, you need to have numbers, and and then you might need to supply something to the bank, and I want to grow my business, so it requires some work, and so that's February and March.
That's right. That's what we call in small business ownership Q1.
Yeah. Yeah. Then and then we start with April, and I'm down fly fishing for trout and doing a little bit of spring training for the dogs because we can still run them on wild birds, and then May hits and life goes hectic again, and the computer seems to collect dust. So I try to get all that done now.
It's a lot less fun to run the mouse than it is to run the fishing pole.
Yes, it is. It is. So no ice fishing for me. If we could do it out of a bigger hole and it involved casting, maybe. But yeah, my folks retired too, moved to Florida, and that was kind of the big catalyst. It's like guys spending $300-$500 to go up to Lake of the Woods to ice fish in a little shack with 8-inch hole, and the same price I can be in Florida on the beach fly fishing for snook. No brainer.
Caught the best bass of my life this winter down in Florida.
Did you?
I did.
Yeah, big guy.
Biggest fish I've ever caught. It was almost 10 pounds.
Wow, that's a nice bass.
Beautiful.
Not too many of them running around like that up here.
No.
Although I've gotten an 8-pounder on the river here.
Really?
Which is, I probably should have taken a little bit more close care of, and maybe at least looked at the record books.
Turn that into somebody.
I may have released a top 10 state record, maybe. I don't know exactly what the record is.
So it's still out there for me to catch then.
You can catch that fish.
Perfect.
And we caught a couple more that were in the 7 pounds. So that's the only time I've ever had that happen. We slammed this stretch of river, and I bet you we caught 5 fish over 6 pounds. And my personal best, it was 23, a little over 23-inch smallmouth.
That's awesome.
Yeah, smallmouth are really hard to tell in a picture because they're not that big to begin with. 23-inch smallmouth is huge. And so the difference between an 18-inch smallmouth and a 23-inch, that's 5 inches. How are you going to tell that on a picture? So I have this picture of this fish, and I have to tell everybody, look at my thumbnail and look how big the eyeball is on the fish. And then all of a sudden perspective hits. It's like, holy cow, you can actually fit your fist in that smallmouth's mouth.
That's pretty cool.
So there's some great fish, and I really can't urge listeners enough to come up, take advantage of Beth's services, and get on the river. And if you want somebody to show you a really good time, I'm here. But Beth's got everything. I mean, you really, really can show up and be a novice and get on the river and enjoy your time up here. And I can't tell listeners enough to take advantage of it.
I couldn't agree more, Bryan. Thank you so much for coming out today.
I appreciate it. Thanks for coming on the podcast, and look forward to lots of good things to happen this year.
2022, here we go.
Yeah. Well, I've opened up a little bit of light onto my world in the summer, so I really can't stress enough. Check out the information in the show notes about Beth and Wild River Outfitters. There's plenty of room for us on the river. I really appreciate everyone tuning into this show for so long. I'm amazed. I've got some really neat things in the works for my off season here to propel this forward. I'm just going to keep a wrap on it for right now, so stay tuned. Head on over to the Patreon page too. For $5 a month, you're going to start getting some pre-release shows. I'm going to have some merch that's going to come out and get that out to the Patreons. And if I can get enough people, I want to really put together a nice hunt for everyone, and can't get a few of us together this fall here. Not sure where yet, but stay tuned. If you guys get over there, you might be able to have a voice in where we go shoot some critters this fall. So I hope everyone had a great hunting season. Thanks again for tuning into this show. Like, share, subscribe. You know the drill. Get out the checkbooks now that Christmas is over and join that local conservation group. Stay tuned for more. Oh yeah, and shoot straight. God bless America, and we'll see all you boys and girls soon.